done this morning. You can talk to me. All righty, it's close enough for 5 o'clock for government work, so we'll call this meeting to order. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Quake Williams, and the invocation led by Senior Reverend Dr. Charles Stewart, as a senior pastor of Marion Baptist Church. Please stand, please.
Please stand, face the flag, and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. We come to you with grateful hearts, Almighty God, for the many gifts of life we enjoy each and every day. Among those gifts we cherish most especially this day, the gifts of this community and its leaders. It is from this group of community leaders that some are gathered in this place, in this hour, to consider its health and well-being and to act for its perpetual good. Give each one present a renewed sense of the importance of this work and of the importance of carrying it out in all humility, truthfulness, and respect. Keep before this group the needs and concerns of all this county's citizens, including those who are easily forgotten or overlooked. Save these convened for these deliberations from the temptations to the misuse of power in any way. Grant to this gathered body a spirit of deep collegiality, born of a mutual love for this community and her people. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, everyone. Now for the amendments to the agenda. I believe we have a couple of amendments to make.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to include the following two items. Item 6A, a presentation by Paige Wright on the Explorers After School Program, and item 10C, ARPA Review Committee appointments.
All righty, thank you. We have a second. Okay, a motion and second to amend the agenda to include that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed likewise? Sounds like it was unanimous to approve the amended agenda. Minutes of the previous meeting. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to read those minutes. Do we have any corrections, or do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a couple of seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed likewise?
Mr. Chairman, I abstain.
Okay, we have 6-0-1.
For a reason of not being
Right. Public hearing, we're fortunate tonight. We don't have any, but I like those. Usually it indicates we got some growth. So Clegg, let's get some going here. We have a presentation of Ms. Paige Wright. It's good to have you here tonight. Thank you for coming.
I'm happy to be here. I've worked with Mr. Utt to get the Explorers After School program started this year. We currently are operating in 4 elementary schools. We are in Atkins, Chilhowie, Marion, and Oak Point. As of today, we officially have 40 students staying. We have 8 counselor staff plus myself. We have, like any other program that gets started, we've started with some things, we've made adjustments as we've gone. One of which is with the registration form. We're getting ready to take it from the paper version to also offer it as a online Google type form. We have plans to have some presentations and some documents out at the upcoming parent-teacher conference. The school board office is sending out bright arrow messages to the parents and guardians so that they are aware of the program, reminding them of the program. We have recently started using the Remind app as school employees, we were kind of hesitant to give out our personal cell phone numbers, but at the same time, we wanted to have a way to communicate with the parents, especially ones that were going to be picking up students before 6 o'clock. So we are using the Remind app so that there's no exchange of personal information. They can message saying, I'll be there in 10 minutes, I just pulled in. I get the message as well as the lead counselor at each school. They can immediately respond, have the child ready, so it's a seamless exit. So far we have happy parents, and we have several really happy parents because they now have secure safety of their child after school. Any questions?
I just want to comment that in the Yankees at school, a lot of, we've only got like 4 or 5 kids there at one point, but
Right.
very happy parents.
Absolutely.
Very happy with the program itself, happy with being able to do that with their children. So I want to thank everybody that was involved in getting this up and running and doing it so quickly.
We started with some small numbers in a couple of schools. The Oak Point counselor this week, I'm surprised my head isn't mounted somewhere. She went from 3 last week to 11 today. Parents are finding out, and the best way to promote anything is word of mouth. So you have happy parents, they're sharing with happy parents, and it's just been a win-win so far.
Right. That's what I'm hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Judy.
Paige,
Yes.
I would just like to thank you for taking the leadership role in this, because I know, we were scrambling to find somebody to do that. Thank you so much.
You are very
Great
welcome.
job.
You are very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Lisa's going to give us a short financial statement presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There on your dice, you should have the revenue summary. We'll begin with that, and this is through August 31st, 2021. It's, again, broken down by fund. If you turn to the back page for the total column, we have a budgeted amount of $100,246,861, which Dr. Ratcliffe pointed out last week that number is off slightly. We're off $7 on the revenue side and $7 on the expenditure side, so we're working to get that correct. It's just due to some rounding errors on the spreadsheet. So that number is actually $100,246,868, and that should be reflective on both the revenue and expenditure side. The current revenue collected through August 31st was $5,324,380.59. Year to date is $12,371,618.58, with a remaining balance of $87,875,242.42. That's the revenue summary for August. The next sheet you have there is the expenditure summary. Again, this is through August 31st. It's broken down by fund. If you're interested in looking at each fund balance or fund totals. On the final page, the total column, the current expenditure through August 31st was $4,655,485.79. The year-to-date total is $9,098,814.36, with a remaining balance of $91,148,060.64. The next spreadsheet you have there is from the Treasurer's Office. It's the county expenses and appropriation through August 31st. The ending bank balance for August 2021 was $11,670,344.05. That's compared to $11,057,000 in July. I believe Mr. Burkett said we were $2 million ahead of where we were this time last year. So we're trending in a positive direction. On the next page, there's the Smyth County water and sewer and the uncollected county taxes. For the water and sewer, there is an uncollected balance in August 2021 of $2,287,698.45. That's down $107,485 from last month. So our collections, that number has decreased, our collections have gone up a little bit. And then on the uncollected county taxes through August 2021, it's $3,476,912.19, and that is down $226,639 as compared to July. And then finally, you have your treasurer's accountability report there attached. If you'd like to summarize that, take a look at it. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Lisa? Hearing none, thank you, Lisa. Payment of invoices, accounts payable, and additional appropriations. I guess all we have to do now is approve the payment of the invoices, is that correct?
Yes, sir, but there's no appropriations.
We've already appropriated the money to pay these with. We just, hopefully everyone's had a chance to go through these this list of invoices. We're doing a little bit different, but any questions, comments, or if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve paying these bills.
To approve.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion to second, any further discussion on the bills? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise? Sounds like it was unanimous. Give me just a second while I find my page back here. Citizens time, did anyone sign up for citizens time?
Yes, sir.
Maybe for item 10.
Jay Overby, would you come forward and state your name and address for the record, please?
I think it's on the agenda. You got an issue?
It is, yeah, it's coming up, Mr. Chairman, under item 10, B.
Okay. We'll just wait till we get there then. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few words about, this is Constitution Week. I'm sorry, Charles Wasson, Wasson Circle, Marion, Virginia. This is Constitution Week, and I like the Constitution of the United States. A lot of people in Washington, some in Richmond for the last many decades, seem to be ignoring the Constitution. People that are not elected are giving orders that impact families. And I guess I really look to y'all to be a buffer between those that are not obeying the Constitution and those that would like to see the Constitution upheld. Everybody in Washington takes an oath to obey the Constitution, but most of them have their fingers crossed and don't do it. So, Constitution starts off, we the people, and it's meant to protect the liberties of the people by constraining the government. Unfortunately, the people are not doing their job, and people in government are overstepping their bounds. And if it goes on, we'll end up in a situation like, I thought it was kind of humorous. This guy said, well, you know, you get your COVID shot, and then you need another booster, and then you need another booster, and then you need a fourth or fifth booster, and then you get a booster every 5 or 8 months, and the final booster is communism, which is where it's heading. Y'all may be for an era that when communism was dead, but that's probably one of the biggest lies that's ever been told. Over 1 billion people in communist China are controlled by communists. Russia is still controlled by the former head of the KGB, Putin. and they're a communist country. So a country with the biggest land area and a country with the biggest population are still communist, and we're not too far behind. So I'm a big fan of the Virginia Constitution. The Federal Bill of Rights was based on the Virginia Constitution. The Virginia Constitution starts out with the Bill of Rights. The Federal Constitution was an add-on 3 years later. So I'd just like to pass out a few copies of the Bill of Rights. And if y'all, as a Board of Supervisors, will protect the people's rights from Richmond, from Washington, and that would be really good, really nice. And particularly with the matter of gun control, that's where we hope y'all will step up and say enough is enough, and that's the hill we'll die on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Mr. Chairman, Friday is Constitution Day. So we send information to all the school principals that will be sharing with their schools on Friday.
When we signed the proclamation, we have hanging here in the, we hung it right here in the boardroom, so we'd have it. So we did that last week. So, you know, anyone in the military has sworn oath to the Constitution. I think all of us, when we took our oath of office, did. So it's a very important document, right up there with our Bible. So I'm not sure I said that. But that's the way I feel. All righty, moving on now. I'll close citizens' time, and we'll move to the old business items, the budget committee. And attachment. Judy, you want to read that first? I know I was.
Page 43?
Yeah, I was the chair, but I.
Sure, I'd be glad to. The budget committee met on Tuesday, September the 7th, and those present were Charlie Atkins and myself, and I think Lori was on vacation, and also then members of the staff. One of the things that was considered was after the county has gone through the process of using the RFP from the Twin County Emergency Communications Radio Study, the county recently received the price quote and timeline from Federal Engineering. The county originally anticipated the project total to be between $75,000 to $100,000 and cross over 2 fiscal years. However, the total quote was for $60,000, which was great. It was less than what we had anticipated, and will be complete in late winter or early spring of next year. Due to the importance of the project, Mr. Utt asked that and recommended transferring $10,000 from our general fund, supplemental appropriations to Fund 502 Capital Improvements Fund to supplement the original $50,000. I made the motion to approve, and it was seconded by Mr. Atkins. The second thing that was considered was the broadband study, and the recent budget amendment that was approved by the Board of Supervisors at the August 26th meeting included the $40,000 grant from the Department of Housing and Community Development for the broadband grant. Those funds were budgeted for the general fund, but the grant expenditures are in the capital improvements fund. Mr. Utt asked approval to transfer the $40,000 in grant revenues from the general fund to the account 502 for the project. Mr. Utt added that the county is working through the RFP process and hopes to have a recommendation at the next broadband committee meeting. Of course, we all know this is an important project for our county, and we're glad to be able to support this. I made the motion to authorize the transfer of monies, and Mr. Atkins seconded it. Mr. Utt presented the committee with the following appropriation recommendation request. From Water and Sewer, there was a submission of request to appropriate a $1,000 balance from the Water and Sewer Deposit Fund to 501-085010-5424 for FY 21-22. I know all this doesn't make a lot of sense to general people, but it's important in our accounting process to have those in the proper funds. Mr. Adkins made the motion to recommend this transfer, and I seconded it. Mr. Utt then reviewed the budget effects caused by the delay in the meals tax implementation. As you all will recall, at the last meeting, the board decided to postpone implementation of that tax that was originally planned for this fiscal year. So this in effect had the effect of taking the $250,000 out of the proposed finance director position. And Mr. Utt noted that the county currently has $150,000 capital improvements plan for finance software, and added these funds will likely not be spent this fiscal year, and he recommended eliminating those two items in the capital improvements line item. So that zeroes out those two accounts. The anticipated revenue from the mills tax of $250,000 will be zeroed out by eliminating this position, and also the capital improvements for the accounting software. Do you want us to amend all these others? I don't think we really need to read that.
No, I thank you. We'll go back now on the first with the radio system study. The committee recommended authorize the transfer of $10,000 from supplemental appropriations. That's a committee recommendation. So any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the transfer say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise. Sounds like that was unanimous. The second was a broadband study. The committee recommended that we get it all in one fund, and so we're authorized to transfer $40,000 from the general fund to the capital improvement fund. Committee recommendation. Do we have any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise. Sounds like that was unanimous. Next was the Water and Sewer Department refund. There's actually $1,000 in the refund deposit account. We just want to appropriate all of it, so if they need to make a deposit, as long as they have all their ducks in a row and all the proper approvals, they can go ahead, and the taxpayer doesn't have to wait for us to meet as a board to authorize the payment or repayment. So that's a committee recommendation. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sounds like that was unanimous. And the meals tax, hopefully it's not on the board there, but in your packet, which shows where we're going to decrease the revenue line by $250,000 and decrease the finance position and decrease the two big items, the finance position and capital improvements. And that'll bring us back in line with budget for reality-wise. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor of this say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise. Sounds like that was unanimous. Smyth County Buildings and Grounds. Ms. Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Smyth County Building and Grounds Committee met on Friday, September 3rd. In attendance, myself, Mr. Sturgill, members absent, Mr. Ratliff, staff members present, Mr. Utt, Ms. Richardson, Ms. Harvey, and Mr. Greer. The first item we discussed is this building and the county building use study. Unfortunately, we still technically do not have ownership of this property. There's been some things going back and forth in regards to the sewer line and changing things, and so hopefully that'll all be finalized soon. In addition to that, we discussed, once we do take ownership of this building, what that's going to look like. Obviously, you all know that we've kind of outgrown this building with all the offices that are here. We have some buildings that we own that we may could use in a different way or even sell. So we talked about including the health department and possibly social services in this building, since the clientele crosses over. It would kind of be a one-stop shop for those folks. We talked about the building use feasibility study and identify our needs instead of our perceived needs, because we may think we know what we need to know, but we may not. So it's best to have professionals look at it. In addition to that, I want to make sure we understand anytime we go after grant funding or anything to help us with any expenses, they look for this feasibility study and they want to see that. So it's important that we have this. So after we had a long discussion about what the future looks like of this building, Supervisor Mr. Sturgill made a motion to authorize the county administrator to move forward with the architectural and engineering services RFP for the feasibility study and space needs assessment. I seconded that motion and it was unanimously approved. And we did have this budgeted for in this fiscal year budget. So that is a committee recommendation.
All righty, so that's a committee recommendation or a motion. Any discussion?
So it was already in the budget?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed likewise? Sounds like we have unanimous. Now we're moving into the Personnel Committee. Attachment 5, page 51 of our agenda. Mike, I believe, Mr. Sturgill, I believe you chaired that, so.
A meeting of the Personnel Committee was held at the County Office Building Friday, September 3rd, 2021 at 9:30 a.m. Members present were Acting Supervisor Charlie Atkins and Chi District Supervisor Mike Sturgill. I called the meeting to order at 9:45 that day. County Administrator Sean Up reviewed the following information regarding 4-H staffing options. The former 4-H program assistant Bailey Robertson left several months ago. The staff of 4-H and the extension agent have been working to fill the position, currently a county position. The leading candidate is doing the same work in Tazewell County, would like to move to Smyth County. However, the issue is that she works as an employee of Virginia Tech rather than the county. By leaving Virginia Tech, she would lose seniority and built up leave benefits. The option has been presented to look at running the current vacancy through Virginia Tech rather than Smyth County. The county would still be liable for cost either way. Unit Coordinator, Extension Agent Andy Overbay introduced Rhonda Fuller, the leading candidate for the 4-H county position. Ms. Fuller discussed her experience and interest in filling the position. The committee discussed the pros and cons of considering the option of running the vacancy through Virginia Tech versus Smyth County. No action was taken. Discussion ensued. Mr. Utt presented the following information for the county's consideration. Water and sewer equipment operator. The county is losing a senior employee in the water and sewer department to retirement at the end of the year. With this in mind, the county wanted to start planning ahead in the proposed hiring of his replacement at the minimum and potentially consider an additional position due to the workload in the department. The committee discussed the retirement of a senior employee and County Administrator Sean Up would like to be being the recruiting process of hiring a replacement and the additional position of a machine operator with a CDL due to the workload of the water department. Atkins District Supervisor Charlie Atkins made a motion to authorize the county administrator to move forward with 2 positions in the water sewer department for equipment operators. The Chi District Supervisor seconded the motion. It was unanimously approved. Mr. Up presented the following information on the ARPA project manager as follows. As with CARES Act funding, the ARPA funding comes with a litany of reporting requirements and oversight. Aaron Sizemore provided the staffing to cover the CARES Act fund through the contract the county and MRPDC agreed to the following: the hiring of the county administrator. Mr. Utt has discussed options with Mr. Sizemore to provide the same level of support for the ARPA funding. Mr. Sizemore offered to do it for 1% of the amount of the county received, evenly split out each fiscal year until 2026. The last year of funding is to be spent. That would equate to just over $10,000 a year and is an eligible expense. Since the county does not have an engineering department or project manager on staff, Mr. Utt would like to recommend the board considers looking into this option. The current ARPA rules allow for the administrative costs to be charged to the fund and not an amount not to exceed 5% of the total, $292,000 in this instance. That is spread out until the funding is expended, likely to 2024 or 2025. The county will go in a variety of directions, but for now, Mr. Utt just wanted to bring the possible need to the Personnel Committee's attention for future contemplations. No action was taken. Discussion ensued. With no further business, the meeting adjourned at 10:05 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Sturgill. I'd like to point out and just the meeting was called to be there at 9:30, and yours truly didn't show up to 9:45, so that's why it started late. I apologize for everybody concerned, but that's, I forgot about it. So, but we had a good meeting, they were patient and waited on me, and I appreciate that, but, as for the 4-H option, there's nothing to do right now. That'll come back before us, again, possibly. The one action we have from that meeting is I made a motion to authorize the county administrator to move forward with 2 positions on water sewer department for equipment operators. That's a committee recommendation. Do we have any discussion?
I do.
Go ahead.
You know, I work there. And I was gonna wait to bring this up to later, but I'm gonna use it in my argument. I'm with going ahead on the retiree. I'm not with the additional because I don't think it's needed. I think we need to look at management and redo some things. And my point is, put my glasses on. You wanna go back to Cleghorn, you lost over half your water this month, or the month of August. That's unacceptable. I mean, you're buying every penny of it. And that wasn't only that month, January, February, March, April, May, June, over 40%. Are you looking at these, Sean? Would you go over them when you get them?
I do.
Are you having any discussion with Wally on why it's continuing on like that?
Yeah, some of the lines were, it sounded like were old lines. Some of them, of course, I think one of them where if you look at it, we gained water instead of lost water, but that was a bad meter.
Cleghorn's one of our newest systems, and in Out Valley, it was put in when I was here. And then Atkins, you got a 30%, 36%. I don't see that we need somebody else. I see some dead time. I think we need to look at how we're scheduling things and doing things. You know, our water hadn't grown any. We're trying to cut because of the food tax. You know, we don't hire somebody in building inspector, and I can see that, I understand it, because building's at an all-time high. But I don't see it in water because we haven't grown any. What I do see, in Watson's Gap, we had loss. And fire hydrants I go by, I don't see weed eated. All these things used to get done with the same amount of people. So why ain't they getting done now? And I'm all for helping anybody, but I'm all for seeing what I see, and I don't think it's time to add in the water. I think it's time to look at it and say we need to step it up a notch. I don't think a 54% loss is acceptable, and I don't think you can blame it on old lines and Cleghorn and Apple Valley. So I don't mind spending money when we need it, but I don't think that's the issue here. And if them boys was working daylight to dark and didn't have time to go home, I might see it, but we just give them their trucks. I mean, we've done stuff to help them out. And I think somebody needs to step it up some more than that. And if I didn't feel like it, I wouldn't say it, because I worked with them boys, they're my buddies. But they ain't gonna keep me from doing what I think's right. And I don't think hiring somebody's the issue. We just hired somebody, I met the guy the other day, from another county, and that's fine, I don't have a problem with him, I understand he's a class 1, but my question is this guy gonna work in the ditch, fix water leaks and stuff? Is that part of his responsibility?
What we're hoping is that he takes over the water control, the treatment inspections, and we get more people into the ditch. Because right now we have, I think, 2 or 3 that are scattered, and we'd like to get that under one umbrella so that he's coordinating more of it.
Is that solely why we hired him?
No, honestly, we didn't get very many applications, did we?
No, and, you know, being a class 1 operator, that's handy to have,
Yeah.
especially since we're losing.
It is, and I'm not trying to interrupt you, but we're a small water system, and we have a leak at night, it's all bodies on hands. By the time you put flaggers and stuff in, if you hire one guy specifically for one thing, and this is a nice guy, I met him, but
Right.
I don't know if he's.
And the intention is for him to address, put him basically in charge of this water loss, is to to go out, and if you look on Claythorne down at the bottom, there's been a lot of leaks out there. And that was the goal, was to get him to where we see these things and he goes and looks for them.
Well, the only way I ever found to find leaks is get out of the truck and go to meter to meter.
Right, and that's what you'll
and
have
work.
to do.
And I'm not, I don't know how to word this and not step on nobody's toes, but, he's a pretty big guy. I mean, I don't know how versatile he'll be when it comes to actually fixing leaks, and he may be the best there was, but I don't think you can pin this down to a one-thing deal in the system we got. And you know, when it comes to fixing leaks, I mean, them boys gotta get out and
Right.
walk and find it, and you can't,
Yeah.
you know, I see here on 2 places, Charlie, and I'm taking some time, but I'll hustle through this. Our tank overflowed twice in 2 months. Tank overflow. Come on. 170,000. We buying this water. It ain't the time to be hard somebody. It's the time to say, look, we expect this production, and we're gonna get it. And I'm stepping on some toes now. Wally's my buddy. But, I believe in people doing their job. And them boys is not covered up. There's some dead time. I know. I've been there. So if we're trying to save money with the meal tax and we got our rescue squad coming, it ain't the time to be hiring another extra person for the water. I'm all for helping you. You need it, but not in the water.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
When I received my packet and I reviewed it, I had a big concern as I went through it, because I looked at it as just a general citizen. And it did concern me as I went through each committee report. It was almost a request to hire or to outsource or to contract. And that concerns me, that seems to be a pattern. I think that we have people who are employed, they're supposed to have certain qualifications, and they get good salaries, and that's not to minimize anybody or any department. But when we make these decisions, these have to continue to be funded. And simply because a grant might provide some money doesn't mean that we have to waste or fill it with a position. I know some members of this board are more liberal than others, and I'm probably more conservative, and I understand that. But from an accounting perspective, I think that you have to look at the long-range plan and be responsible to the citizens of this county. I wish that more of them would attend the meetings, would read these packets. It takes us a few hours to go through it ourselves, and I know it's not pleasant, but there's a lot of information in here. You look who's on the committees. Is it the same people that are serving in some primary committees repeatedly that are making the decisions that are governing our county? People, your vote is important, and you need to take interest in what's happening in your county. And that's, I feel like, you know, as a board of supervisor, we're commissioned with that fiduciary responsibility. And I want to support recommendations. I want to be able to place reliance in it, but I don't want to always have to ride herd over it and feel like I'm having to monitor it. I want to be able to have faith in the recommendations that come.
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to make a quick comment. From a management leadership standpoint, for me, looking back when the changes were made, when Wally was over solid waste and then he was put over water and sewer and solid waste, when I called Wally for a solid waste, she was like, okay, hold on, I'm fixing this water, like I gotta do this, or vice versa. And for me, I just feel like if you're gonna be a good leader, if you have too much on your plate and you're stretched too thin, you can't make sure your staff's out there doing their job. If there's downtime, that needs to be addressed. But is it not being addressed because Wally's spread thin? I don't know the answer to that because I'm not as familiar with it as Mr. Stevenson is. But anytime there is someone, especially who's been here for quite some time, leaves, I think that's a great time to evaluate the position, evaluate the department, and maybe take a look and see if there's a way to restructure, because you may have the hands that could fill in without having to add a new position. And I personally would rather see maybe some type of organizational chart of how that department could be changed a little bit. I think it's a lot to depend on Wally to do water and sewer and solid waste. I don't know it like Mr. Stevenson does, but.
May I follow up with you?
Sure.
I don't disagree with you. I think the problem right here is Wally needs to learn to supervise instead of get down a ditch and fix a leak. You ought to have a crew of men that goes out and takes care of that, and you oversee it. That's what a supervisor does. Back when they was PSA days, one man, Ray Lawrence, took care of collection and everything, and it works fine. Now, I think Wally's a hell of a good leader, and I think stuff, but I think he needs some coaching by the people that we pay big money to, sitting in the office over here, on you need to lead. You don't need to go out every time there's a call and go to work. Now, I'm all for hiring us an operator. That's what we need. That's what Curdy is, and that's what he's got. And I agree with you that we need to look at it, restructure. But I don't think hiring somebody or adding or getting money every time we got a problem is the answer to it, kind of like Judy said.
Right.
I think he is a problem. But I'm more on line with you. I think we take it and look at it. And I ain't saying change of Wally. I think he's a hell of a leader.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
He's a real knowledgeable guy. But I think he needs to lead. That's what you do. You make sure everybody's doing their job. You don't actually get out and do it yourself. If you do, then you come strapped like you're talking about, and you can't do it. No leader can do it.
Right.
So, you know.
And I appreciate him going out and doing it, but that was my thing. Like, is he so overwhelmed that he's always doing it, or is it just because nobody else will and he has to? Like,
Well,
I guess that's my question.
Whatever the reason has to be corrected till it works the right way.
Right. So I'm not against it. I want to make sure everybody is doing their job, and if they're not doing their job, then they shouldn't be working here.
But
I'd
I'll
rather
say one
see-
more thing and I'll shut up. I don't think you can hire 10 people and still be in the same hole that you're in if you don't,
Right.
if you've not got a good flowing system going. So, you know, I don't think we need this guy right now. Let's hire a building inspector and replace Curdy with an operator, and maybe, I think you need to look at some of these things and sit down with Wally, and you may be doing it, I don't know, and say, look, what are we doing to correct this problem? And listen, an excuse of something not being corrected is never good enough. If you're good at what you do, you'll correct it. And you know, and if I'm wrong, somebody tell me I'm wrong. If what I do professionally for a living, I don't give you an excuse for failing. I give you a reason for succeeding. So I think that's what we need.
Any further discussion? Okay, we still have a motion on the floor, the committee recommendation on the floor, so we have to vote accordingly. Motion is to approve, to move forward with 2 positions in the water and sewer department for equipment operators. That's the motion. All those in favor say aye. I'll say aye. All those opposed likewise. Sounds like it's voted down.
May I make a motion on top of that, or does it need to go back to the committee? I'd be willing to make a motion to go ahead and seek a replacement for Curdy's retirement as equipment operator. Go ahead and start seeking.
Okay, we have that motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed likewise? All righty, so we at least have one new person can come on board. All righty, moving into the Safety Committee report. Adele.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Public Safety Committee actually had a joint meeting with the Town of Marion's Fire and Police Committee. That was on Friday, September 3rd at 11 a.m. In attendance, myself and Mr. Sturgill, and Mr. Ratliff was absent that day. Staff members present, Mr. Utt, Ms. Richardson, Ms. Harvey, Mr. Crawford, and Mr. Williams. And others present are OMD, Dr. Bruzzo, Adel Fire Chief Steve Widener, who was representing the Smyth County Sheriff's Department, Chilhowie Assistant Fire Chief Brandon Moore, Mayor Helms from the Town of Marion, Mr. Rush, Town Manager from the Town of Marion, and Council Member from the Town of Marion, Mr. Barker. We also had some folks from Marion Fire and EMS, Mr. Talley, Mr. Krieger, Mr. Tashrow, Mr. Klein, and Mr. Wyatt. The topic of discussion was automatic aid, and for those of you who are not familiar with that process, currently, for the last several years, the town of Saltville, the town of Chilhowie, and Adwell Fire Department have been participating in automatic aid, which is a program that was put in place basically to offer support to the other departments. So instead of wiping out all of Chilhowie Fire Department, if there's a call, they may use a tanker truck or an engine from Adwell Fire Department as backup. So that way there's still someone in the building if there's another call. As you know, volunteerism is a thing of the past, and it's hard to get bodies in the building to do these things anymore. So the fire departments are wanting to work together to make sure that there's coverage. There are some departments in the county that would like to participate in auto aid. However, the town of Marion has been very forthcoming about the fact that they did not want to participate, and since they are in the center of the county, that prevented other departments from participating because having that gap in the middle kind of didn't make sense for everybody else. So Assistant Fire Chief Brandon Moore, who was kind of the person behind this, the development of this automatic aid program, presented a history and overview of the auto aid system as it was originally proposed and where it stands today. He went over the map, and I wish we had time to go over it because it's kind of interesting how he breaks out the entire county in different coverage areas and has all the addresses and 1 alarm fire, 2 alarm fire, 3 alarm fire, and literally lists the apparatus that would come from each department. So it's very, very specific on what apparatus would come from where. He also know that fire calls are front loaded, which means as soon as the tone goes out, it's best to have all hands on deck the first 5 to 10 minutes of the fire. And also too, from a safety standpoint, the immediate danger to life and health situation, you have to have 2 people in and 2 people out. So if you send 2 firefighters in, you have to have 2 out that could go in and help them if needed, or switching back on a rotational basis. There's been several large fires in the county over the last couple years where this was an issue, and it could have been life-threatening for some of our departments. Because by the time you call in backup from another fire department, they arrive on scene, it's 20 to 30 minutes after the initial call went out, and it's just unsafe for the firefighters on scene. So, Marion Manager Bill Rush, Mayor Mr. Helms advised that the burnout and the abuse of the system is a big concern for the town of Marion. So prior to the meeting, one of the things that Mr. Utt and Mr. Crawford and Mr. Williams, they put together a list from 2018 to 2021 of the calls that could have been automatic aid, and they showed the calls that Marion would have assisted on and the calls that Marion would have received assistance on. So I think it was kind of eye-opening to them, because basically at the end of the day, if you divide the months out by the calls, they would only be assisting on 1 call per month, but in return would be getting that, if not more, assistance. Obviously with the firefighters there from the town, I wanted to hear from them. They're boots on the ground. I appreciate the leadership from Mr. Barker, Mayor Helms, and Mr. Rush, but I'd much rather hear from the guys that go out when the tones go off. And they were in support of automatic aid and Marion participating for their safety and for the load that they have to carry as far as calls are concerned. So I was thankful for the feedback that they expressed. So after a very long discussion, finally Mr. Rush agreed to continue the discussion and to review a proposal for the town of Marion to enter automatic aid for fire calls. And then, so moving forward, Mr. Crawford is going to drop a draft paperwork to present to the town of Marion, hopefully this week, and that really kind of outlines expectations and that. So we're hoping to do a 6-month trial period, see how that goes, make adjustments as we need to. But we're thankful to finally have them on board with this program, as it is very important, and hopefully it'll be a countywide automatic aid program. But I'd love to see that happen by the end of this year. So after it was all over and everybody expressed their opinions and it got a little tense here and there, we were all thankful for working together, and appreciative for everybody being at the meeting. So with no further business to discuss, we adjourned at 12:18.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I do have a concern about our relationship with the town of Marion. I have a great deal of respect for our mayor, and I want to see us have a mutually beneficial cooperative effort with them. I don't want to see them alienated. I don't want to see any walls built up there. So since this is handled in committee, and I know we're not privy to probably a very long meeting that happened, I'd like a little bit more detail. Lori, when Mayor Helms mentioned burnout and abuse of the system, is there any more detail?
So what he was basically talking about is like, right now, there's only, I believe, is it 5 firefighters that they have that are fully trained that can go out on a call? So I'll use the fire that was down by, on, what's the street down by the, go past Hardee's and Broad Street. The fire there where there was a homicide and that situation. Okay, so that's an excellent example. That call, there was only 5 of them on scene. So 2 went in, 2 were out, and then you had the incident commander. Well, when they realized how out of control the fire was, by the time they were there going in, trying to get somebody out, a lot of time had passed to say, hey, we need help. So then that really puts a burden on them. It's a safety issue for them. So the burnout, I don't want to say assumption because that's not what it is, but what Mayor Helms was seeing as burnout was really just overload on them, because once they go, they're doing the fire. By the time it's all said and done, then they have to clean up afterwards. They're exhausted. Whereas if you have 2 or sometimes 3 other departments that come, you're not as overworked, I guess, because they're having to go in and out. So the part of the automatic aid side that Mr. Helms maybe didn't realize until he saw the full program, I don't think he realized that help would be coming at the front of it to keep the burnout.
Lord, can I add to your comments?
Sure.
One of the advantages of the auto aid program is when it pulls people from exactly the equipment that's needed and people, and it does not pull everybody out. In other words, if there's a big fire in Chilhowie, they don't pull everybody out of Marion. Marion still has people to staff for their cause. The other thing is on the equipment, the trucks, the type of trucks that are dispatched are exactly what goes there. And like the firefighters from Marion said, where they need people is at the beginning of the fire, more so at the end of the fire. So they were really, I think, on board, and once they heard the details of the system and how efficient it is and how it should, and like I said, with the ability to tweak it for the first 6 months if they see something, and I think they all felt good, and I think everybody was on board by the end of the meeting.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mike. That helps. I'm aware of that, but from reading the minutes from this committee meeting, it sounds like the town of Marion is reluctant to participate, and that's my concern. Is I want us to work out any issues that are there.
Sure.
Because I think it's mutually beneficial for everybody.
I felt like at the end of the meeting, Mr. Barker stopped and talked to me, and he was very excited about it after the meeting. And Bill Rush, I felt like was the same way, and I actually talked to Bill on the phone the other day. So I think that there was some. I think they had some misinformation, just didn't quite understand the system.
Right.
And once it was fully explained to them, I think I felt like we had good buy-in from the town by the end of the meeting.
And I think he was thinking that the whole department would have to go. So not only were they fighting their fires with their entire department, now it would be everybody else's fires they were fighting too. So that's where that abuse of the system kind of came
Yeah,
through.
the communication is
Right. So once we explained to them that only certain apparatus comes from certain departments, they were like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once their firefighters spoke and said, yes, we'd love to do this because it would help us more than it would help everybody else.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
So I think it was beneficial to do that, and they were appreciative of having a joint meeting just because we can all talk about it, and it kind of bridged that gap. There's been some contention about it in the past, and it was better just to talk about it all together. So that was all we discussed, and that's all I have for that committee.
I don't think we need that. It's more or less for our information. I think it's a big concession for the town mayor and the manager to open up to us about what their drawback was. That gives us a chance to fix it. Moving on to the Water and Sewer Committee meeting now. Phil, do you want to handle that?
I can. Rather short, so I like short stuff.
Do it right ahead.
meeting of the Smyth County Water and Sewer Committee was held at the county office building on Tuesday, September 7th, 3 p.m. Committee members present was myself and Mr. Atkins. Committee members absent was Mrs. Deal. Staff member Sean Yutt, Lisa Richardson, and Paula Harvey. Meeting was called to order at 3 p.m. Mr. Yutt gives us some information regarding the SSES grant, and that the county has been notified that they've been awarded the SSES grant from DEQ to study the inflow and infiltration issued along Staley Creek and Route 16. Mr. Yutt said that after a conference call with engineering firm Draper Aiden on September the 1st, 2021, the county expects the final official vote by the State Water Control Board to be held on September 28, 2021, with the contracts being released in late October, early November. The engineering firm will be ready to proceed as soon as they are able to get their subcontractors lined up, discussion issued. North Fork District Supervisor Phil Stevenson made a motion to formally accept the $75,000 grant from DEQ and to authorize the county administrator to execute the necessary documents associated with the funding for the SSES grant through the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. Atkins District Supervisor Charlie Atkins second motion, and it was unanimously approved, and we adjourned after that.
All righty, that's committee recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the grant award, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, likewise. Sounds like it's unanimous. Moving on to the next item of business now is the declaration of public nuisance, 409 Flat Ridge Road. Go right ahead, Mr. Williams.
All right, thank you. As you may recall, we had a public hearing last month to consider whether or not 409 Flat Ridge Road, Sugar Grove, Virginia constituted a public nuisance. I think it's fair to say after that public hearing, you all gave them 30 days to work on the property, and so we went back on September the 10th and took pictures, and hopefully you had 4 pages included in your packet. And we tried our best to do apples to apples. So we tried to give you the same view and zoom in approximately the same way so that you would have a fair comparison from what it looked like August 9th, just before the public hearing, and what it looked like, I think, Friday of last week.
Well, it doesn't take a genius to see there's a huge difference.
Got worse. The way I see it, looking at it, it got worse. Maybe we should have kept our mouth shut.
I was gonna ask if the dates got switched. I thought we were supposed to do that. I'm guessing they're not switched.
Alright, let me look at this one. I'm looking at it right. Yeah, I did. Yeah. So both of these is basically same thing, just a different picture of the front.
Yeah, so we try to take a picture of the front, the side, and the rear of the home. The format is the top picture was taken 30 days ago, the bottom picture was taken Friday of last week. So 30 days, at the end of the 30 days that you gave them to clean it up and make a difference.
Next question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Has anybody contacted you or anything? Any contact with these?
I mean, Jay did make a call today, and I returned his call late this afternoon, had to leave a message, but that's the only contact I've had in the last 30 days. I don't know if you want to see that.
Can I speak about that?
Mr. Obey, if you want to come up and speak to us.
The letter I had said that
the re-inspection being on the 13th, which it was yesterday, not the 10th. I went over there. He's hauled a lot of stuff off. A lot of this was not there yesterday, which was the final date he had. He's been trying. He's hauled a lot of stuff off. He had 2 water heaters in the back of his truck when I was there yesterday. Had one on the ground. I think we should have gone back on the appropriate date. The letter I got said the 13th. He was typical. He procrastinated and started at the last minute, you know. Like I say, he's trying to raise 3 children. He's a single parent. He's got a lot on him. He's trying. He's just a poor boy trying to get by, you know. When I was over there yesterday, there was 3 bicycles around back, and there was 2 of these little cars kids ride in, and most everything else was gone. But that's 3 days difference. So, you know.
May I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
You're saying all this stuff in this picture is gone?
Well, what's built on his house is not gone. He didn't tear that lean-to, whatever you want to call it, that shed, he didn't tear down. But I didn't see a majority of this yesterday.
The tires on.
Yeah, because I took a man over, I was going to put 2 guys to hauling stuff off, but
Clay, what's your response to that comment?
I mean, I would be happy to go back and take pictures if that's the pleasure of the board, to see how much change was made over the weekend.
I'd like to see you go back tomorrow, if at all possible, if you can fit it in your schedule, or at least this week. And then that way we got the first meeting in October. You know, the pictures you take this week doesn't show the type of improvement.
I'd like to meet you over there and talk to him and tell him what you tell him and let me hear what you want him to do. Because there's a communication gap, I think. And he feels like he's afraid to come here. He's intimidated and won't speak up for himself. And I'm an intermediary. I'm stuck in the middle. And I don't think he understands fully. I mean, they're trying, put the landscaping stuff out front, and they're trying to clean up what they got. Now, he's poor boy, he ain't got a lot. It's all he's got. But he's trying to do the best he can.
Can y'all set a time when he would be available and then go
We're
with
available most any time.
I'm ready to roll.
How about him?
You buying lunch?
Huh? When's he around?
That's a good question.
I can deal with Jay tomorrow, or can you call him tomorrow morning? Can you try to get in touch with him tomorrow? And then why don't you call me and figure out a time that he's available? We should be able to assuming he's available this week, I should be able to get over there this week.
Yeah, let's not interrupt him at work or anything like that, catch him when he's not at work.
Right.
Is that okay with the board?
Yes, look at Clay, when you go over, be sure and let stovepipe sticking up out of that addition.
I don't know, that's not an issue about this. Well, it's not my job to go for a stovepipe. Y'all always tell me to look about trash.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, I just wanted him to make sure it's safe. I don't wanna have 3 children burn up this winter.
I think we're getting off base here. That stove's a whole nother issue and somebody else's job.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
you gonna need a motion?
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion that we delay it till he goes back and doesn't follow up for our next meeting. But I will say this, I don't think being poor is excuse for being trashed. I've been poor all my life, and I believe in being neat.
I'm all for that.
It don't cost money, and I think we went way beyond with this mess, and I think it's an eyesore. And if it's gone, it's great, but if it's not.
Well, what I saw yesterday is different than this.
Huh?
What I saw yesterday is different than this.
So
But
I'll
we're
make a
not
motion.
seeing the same things. We need to be there at the same time.
We direct Clegg to go back and coordinate it and report back to us at our end of the month meeting.
Right.
Do we have one? We don't have one?
anything for the September, 2nd September, so it'll be the October.
So our October meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'll call you.
I'll second.
Thank
We have a
you.
motion to second. Any further discussion? I would like to add that if we go over this week and it's not clear, you know, we're not gonna keep delaying, you know, he'll get to it next week type thing. We want it good now.
Can we make in this motion, and if it is not clear, that we can proceed with legal action?
Well, I think we should wait and have a separate vote on that.
Okay.
At the next meeting.
All right, then you got my motion to send
Okay.
it back.
I don't want to go any further. I think he's,
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, likewise. Sounds like it was unanimous. I didn't hear any ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey Clay, can I
Yes.
ask you a question before you go? Where we at on the Sanders deal? Did it get cleaned up?
What's the location?
On the cove of Custom Hall? Have you done a follow up on it? You may not have followed up on it. It ain't no big deal.
I did, I remember talking to them. They did file a plan of action and they said that they would clean it up. I'll have to go back and see if I did
Ain't
follow
no
up.
big deal. I'm way out there.
Okay, our next order is the addition to the agenda, the ARPA Review Committee appointments. We were all gonna try to find somebody to serve on that committee. Does anybody have anybody to appoint at this time?
I do.
Okay.
And I don't wanna check in front of the ladies. If y'all have somebody y'all wanna go first, I'll be the gentleman.
I communicated with Sean about meeting times for
How about you? I have one Vincent Adams. He lives on, I don't have his exact address, but, Davis Valley Road.
I have John McLean. That's the one we want him on, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm second. Making a motion on John McLean.
and I have Ronnie Corbin.
Okay. Do you have anybody for you? Yes?
Not yet.
Okay. So we have three to be presented right now. Do we have any discussion on those three? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, likewise. Okay.
I'll have one next meeting.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my microphone. Is that too loud? Trying to be fancy today. So we have a few requests that are starting to come in for use of the ARPA funds. I guess I need some direction. At what point do we start pulling this committee together? Would you like to at least have one or two more members, or maybe after the October board meeting?
I think, in my opinion, after the October board meeting, we should have a full committee and get started.
Okay.
I don't think it's fair to pull three in.
I agree.
Have a quorum on 7 votes.
Yeah. Yeah, I want the full.
That wouldn't be a forum.
I have another, okay, that gets us down to new business. Let's go to it next. Sean, you wanna handle that on the tax on the farm equipment follow-up?
Yeah, I think this is kind of echoing, I'm gonna come up and speak if that's all right. So you have in the packet my little summary narrative. Back in 2010, and I guess Mr. Call is the only one that is still here from that board, but and might be able to speak to it. But there was an expectation that the board was getting away from doing an exception on farm equipment from the personal property taxes. At that time, the budget was passed with the note saying that this budget includes the exception of exempting farm equipment from personal property tax. And that was the only action that was in the minutes, memorialized in the minutes. Fast forward about 5 years, and the board took action to exempt farm animals and household equipment from personal property tax, had a public hearing, and passed an ordinance, which is the proper actions to have taken. About a month or so ago, maybe a little less, Washington County Commissioner of Revenue approached Mr. Richardson asking for a copy of our ordinance where we exempted the farm equipment back in 2010. Lo and behold, he couldn't find anything because there wasn't anything there. We haven't been taxing farm equipment for the last 10, 11 years because of that action. At that time, Mr. Richardson did the calculations.
he had estimated that we were losing about $125,000 in taxes from the farm equipment, but he turned it around and made adjustments to the land use rates, and we ended up having a gain of $135,000. So a $10,000 positive swing on overall revenues at the time. Those the changes that he made back in 2010 to the land use rates continue. So we haven't necessarily, I wouldn't say we've lost revenues. You can't really define it what we've could have lost, because we haven't been asking the farmers what their equipment was for the last 10, 11 years. Have no idea what the inventory would be or what the taxes revenues would be if we started taxing them again. So talking with attorneys, what we'd like to recommend is that this be referred to the Ordinance Committee for further review and possible action. I would expect, to move forward and to do what the expectation of the board from 2010 was, we would need to do a public hearing and do an ordinance, or to amend the ordinance to officially exempt farm equipment from the taxes, from personal property tax rates. It's kind of confusing, but.
You know, I want to start by saying I certainly support agriculture in our county, for sure. I look back at this, though, my concern is, at the time on that board, there were several farmers on that board then, sure, even down to the county administration. That worries me when we start making decisions that of personal benefit. Mm-hmm. Also, animals are exempted. You know, and even at a conservative 125,000, which we don't even, that bothers me too, that we don't have firm numbers to base decisions on. It's like nailing Jello to a tree, and yet we're making very impactful decisions on that. But that's well over $1 million in 10 years.
Well, it was
125.
It was offset by the increase in the land
I'd
use.
like to see those numbers.
Sure,
I
me
know,
too.
I know there's some finagling that happens.
How do you propose getting those numbers? There's no report that we have to file.
Well, can't the commissioner somehow come up with some numbers for us?
Yeah, so according to...
He knows what the land use rate is. He knows how much land is in. I'd like to see where the statement was that it was made up for with increased land use. You know, we've talked about land use a lot. I think it's a good time to review all of those policies. My concern is personal decisions affecting policy in this county that benefits people personally. And, you know, then the general taxpayer is the one who bears the burden of it. And it's nothing in conflict with supporting farming and agriculture. I'm totally for that. But I think just a paragraph on a piece of paper is not enough to make an informed decision. And like Mr. Atkins, you're a farmer yourself. So, you know, that affects you. I think we have to be very careful to be transparent and not to do anything that's perceived to benefit us personally.
I can certainly sit down with Mr. Richardson to see to get that data. I think that part is the easy part. The more difficult thing is is to show what we should have or could have been, should have been, however you want to place it, on farm equipment for the last 11 years, because there's no data. There's absolutely nothing, because at that point in 2010, it was his understanding that it was exempted, so they stopped collecting it. There's nothing to compare. So I think that's going to be the more difficult answer to come up with.
Well, if that's satisfactory to the citizens of Smyth County,
Yeah, sure.
That's what it is.
I agree.
So how can he just stop collecting it without without a formal?
Actually, the commissioner, the board did not come up with this.
Mm-hmm. Came from the commissioner.
Whoever's on the board had nothing to do with bringing it to the board. The commissioner did, because it was so hard to collect this accurately. Mm-hmm. Because the farmer would take equipment and move it to different counties. They would hide it, and be fined or penalized for not filing the paper. It was just so aggravating that it wasn't worth what it was bringing in at that time. It was just a burden on the taxpayers there. Everybody had to file one of the papers, not just farmers. It was everybody. And they would forget to put them in with their taxes and get penalized
Mr.
for
Collins,
it.
I appreciate what
Just a
you're
second,
saying.
Judy, just a second. Phil, you wanted the floor.
Well, I understand where she's coming from, accountability and stuff, but if we're gonna go accountability, then I wanna know what them farmers is paying in tax. And I guarantee you, them poor farmers in Rich Valley are paying more tax than anybody in this county. Probably up close to some major business stores that we have.
Real estate.
And do what?
The real estate.
Yeah, and personal property. You know, and they're working their butts off daylight to dark. And now, I'm not a farmer, but I am a animal owner. And the day that Smyth County goes putting personal property tax on any animal, I'm moving out of Smyth County. I will resign and move out tomorrow. We make our living on animals. We get up before daylight, we work our butt off the dark. And those people who work like that deserve all the help they can get. I'm not mad, I'm not saying you're not right on accountability. I'm saying when it comes down to putting any tax on the farmers in this county, you're gonna have a war with me.
I think the good news on the animals, that part was done appropriately. There's an ordinance that clearly showed the intent of the board and the public hearing. The question is looking at the farm equipment itself, the tractor.
I get all that, but I'm just saying, you know, I think we need to refer it back to the ordinance committee. I'll even make that motion right now and let them look at it. But when it comes down to debate on any new tax coming to them to bring this county new revenue,
You had to file for dishwashers. You had to put down all that stuff on that thing.
I mean,
Microwaves, dishwashers, all
House
of it's
equipment.
listed on there.
Your grandfather's watch.
So it wasn't just
That was
farm equipment.
everybody.
It was
drills, I mean, everything. Yeah, I remember those days. And you know, the thing about it now, and I'm not a farmer, I'm a dog trainer. So go out and buy a tractor. $100,000, $150,000, buy a tractor. And you know, and then the county wants to make some more revenue. When we come here looking for ways to make revenue instead of ways to save money, wrong people sitting behind this table. We ought to be here to find ways to save money. I don't say we don't need revenue, but we ain't gonna get it off the back of the farmers as long as I can stand up and scream. So,
I'm gonna make one comment, then I'll turn the floor back over to you, Judy. There's not a vote that we take, it doesn't affect every citizens in the county, so, I mean, to say that we're doing it all for, you know, every vote affects somebody somehow. I don't care how you vote, it affects somebody. So, Judy, I'll let you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly don't want it to be perceived or taken down another road that is something to do with the service to the farmers. I do know, and Ms. Steele, you've even addressed this question about land use. You know, there are several different component parts of this that I think, as a county, is it fair then to place it on the back of a person going into a factory and standing on their feet for 10 to 12 hours a day?
Sure.
I think, you know, it's not just one segment that we look at. We want the best for everybody in this county to the point that we can. It's not always going to be fair and equal, but we're commissioned with that. And we imperatively have to not put personal interest or benefit ahead of it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second that we send this back to the ordinance committee. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed likewise? All right, the ordinance committee has it. I would sure like to see that back in front of us the next meeting too, because we don't need to have that hanging out there forever.
Absolutely.
may I ask who's on the ordinance committee? Am I on that committee?
I want to say it's you, Mr. Collin, Mr. Atkins.
I don't think it's me anymore. I used to be.
No big deal. I was
We'll find
thinking
out.
I was one of them. I'm just.
No, I. We'll know here in just a second.
The list I have is you three.
Me? Gotta be around the list.
Those three right here?
Yes, that's the list I have, but
Well, while Sean's looking that up, you can interrupt us when you find it.
Yeah, this.
We got a report from our county attorney.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Got a couple zoning ordinance updates for you. One is that today we filed an enforcement action on the Churchland Drive zoning ordinance issue, and hopefully we'll get that resolved in the coming weeks. So wish us luck on that. The other matter that's we need action from you all on is a zoning ordinance issue at 484 Riverside Drive. Of course, I've got in Chohowie, I've got Mr. Williams here. He's been very diligent following up on this. Got to the point that can't reach the people who own the property. This involves some campers that are not being used in a recreational manner, people living in conditions that are not conducive to a healthy community. And Mr. Williams can give more info if you want it. But if you don't want, whether you hear from him or not, I will ask for a motion at the end of that to allow the county attorney to enforce the zone ordinance against the landowners there.
May I speak to that?
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Chairman, may I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
On the property he's referring to at Riverside Road, I've had numerous complaints. I rode over the road and ridden by it. They're building fires tonight. They're doing all this stuff just to harass the neighbors. Noise and loud stuff all night long. The neighbors have had enough. They've called the sheriff's department. They've come several times to intervene, but it's at the point now that I think something has to be done.
May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
How many of them is it?
Initially, there was one RV that was set up on the property. I happened to drop by there today. There is now a conversion van that's been set up, and I saw 3 people hanging out on the lot earlier this afternoon. But yeah, that's the complaint, that we have effectively 2 RVs that are set up on the property and people living there. They initially came to us applying for an electrical permit, and they let it slip that their intent was to live there, and I told them I wouldn't be able to issue that permit. But they've gone ahead and moved the RVs on the property and have been living there ever since.
24/7.
Pretty
How do
much.
they get electrical?
They don't have electrical. And
No
then the
sewer,
other,
nothing?
I'm sorry?
Sewer system? Or
No, and that's, I was gonna address that. The other issue is that there's no approved septic system, and so the neighbors have some concerns about how the sewage is being disposed, because they're reporting that the campers never leave the site. So if they're not leaving the site, they're not taking it to a legal dump station.
Who owns the site that the campers are on?
So the lady that owns it is Miss Reba Presley. If you may remember this one. This property came up as a nuisance complaint many years ago. There was a home on the property and it partially burned. And Miss Presley wound up inheriting the property, and we had to persuade her to go in and clean the home up. And she ultimately did that, but it took a lot of requests on our behalf to get that done. So this is not our first rodeo with Miss Presley.
So is it normal procedure for us to go ahead and take legal, but have you been out there?
Yeah, so typically when I get a zoning complaint, I'll go out, I'll take pictures, I'll send them a letter, I'll tell them that a complaint's been made, and I'll send them pictures to let them know what I consider to be a violation. Oftentimes they'll contact me and they'll work with me to get it resolved. When I'm unable to get in touch with them, or when they absolutely refuse to bring it into compliance, that's when I ask for legal.
So you haven't been able to get in touch with these people?
No, neighbors report that the folks living on the property are not the property owners, that she lives somewhere in Marion. The address on the tax ticket is where we sent notice of violations, because that's where we're required to. But both letters came back as undeliverable.
So legal action, what do we do? I mean, you go to court and they fine them, or what's the deal?
First, we would have the court order an injunction forcing the homeowner to remove the violations. That would be an injunction. If she were to not kick people off the property and not comply, eventually it could become a criminal action. And we would eventually get the right to remove stuff ourselves, or with police. In this case, they're humans, so there might be police action. But hopefully it would never get to that point. Hopefully the injunction would be ordered, she'd get that, perhaps even when she sees the lawsuit, right, that she'll comply and know that we're taking it seriously. But the first step would not be to try to seek a hardcore remedy. It would be an order from a judge telling her she has to cease these violations.
I'll give you that motion when you get ready for one. I don't wanna see Clay go there if people's living like this and endanger him on photos and stuff. If they're violating it, then let's get the injunction and see if they'll clean it up. I think sometime Clay sticks his neck out in what could be some bad situations, and I'd make a motion that we advise the attorney to go ahead with the injunction to get this violation straightened out.
And I'll second it.
Have a motion, second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, likewise.
I asked you how long you think this, and I know it's.
Yeah, unfortunately, the courts, don't move as, you think government moves slow. I would hope that we could get it done in a month or two. That's how, get the order.
Churchland Drive's only taken 5 years, so.
And that's what
I'm
we
not
can-
sure the neighbors will survive 2 months.
I know, it's just, you gotta push the judge and get on the docket, and you have to have, they get 21 days to respond, and.
So can you get the EPA?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I agree too.
You have anything else for us?
That's all from the attorneys.
All righty, thank you.
Do we have an update on, I think it's 450 Adwolf Road?
The one just past the garage on the right? Yes.
It was the one that Mr. Farthing said it was basically be copy-paste from the Churchland Drive issue, and there's 3 or 4 other ones he was gonna change the wording and file them all in court at the same time.
So I have a note here from Mr. Farthing that says that's, after filing today's action, his next move is to work on 243 Quail Run Road, 266 Core Drive, 1229 Lee Highway, and 450 Adwolf.
So
We've got,
they're all on the list.
Great, thank you.
we've got a freight train of zoning enforcement coming.
Awesome, thank you.
All righty. The next up is Sean. I have a sheet of paper here about appropriations concern. Are you gonna address that?
I will. This is the only thing I have to report. So when we did the appropriation budget amendment last week or last month, I did have an error where we appropriated Fund 303, the CDBG food pantry project, twice. So what I'd like to recommend is the board rescind the appropriation of $130,776 to Fund 303. That will balance out the treasurer's files and clear everything up. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I think it does help keep everything balanced as it should.
So our appropriations don't exceed our budgeted
Correct.
expenditures.
Right.
Motion
We-
to rescind.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, likewise. Sounds like unanimous. Is that your supervisor report?
That's it, sir.
Okay, do we need a closed session? I'm not aware of any. Anything else? It's supervisor comment time. I'll start down here with anybody in particular want to start? I'm gonna get me a list, a thing here where I draw names out of the hat. Judy, I hate to, I'll start with you.
I'll make mine short. I would like to thank Dr. Lawson for coming and reminding us of the importance of Constitution Week. It's certainly something that I think all of us have become even more aware of, the principles that are contained in that document, how important they are to us to uphold and to sustain in order to preserve a free country and our freedoms. And I know how much that means to all of us, and I'm very thankful that we have a country where we enjoy those freedoms. And Dr. Lawson, thank you for helping us to commemorate the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I would just like to welcome and recognize 2 residents from my district over in Rye Valley, Ms. Sharon Hayden and Mr. Bob Decamara. They've recently purchased some property along South Fork Road, there where the river goes by. They own a private plane and would like to have a small airfield landing strip that's not in our zoning. although we have the one in Chihuahua, we have the crossroads that was kind of grandfathered in, but I think this is important, something that we should look at and add, because I'm sure they're not the only folks who would like to do this. The exciting part about it is, thinking ahead and how they would be able to utilize that space, promote tourism and fly fishing on the South Fork, which is a big thing. We have folks coming from all over, so I appreciate them and for being here, and look forward to working with them and Mr. Williams and this team up here to push that through. So other than that, I appreciate everybody, the staff and the board, and thankful to see us working together with the towns, and looking forward to the new things coming down the pike, and everybody be safe going on.
Thank you, Ms. Neal.
I welcome, aviation's big to me. I think it ought to be big to the community. I mean, I don't think in Washington County you can even build a private airport anymore. Maybe you know that. I don't think that needs to be the case in Smyth County. Aviation's a wonderful thing, so I don't know, where's our step? We need to go to the ordinance committee, what we need to do?
So this was something that was brought to my attention a few weeks ago, and in working with them, we discovered that airports are not included in our zoning ordinance. So I had to declare that a use not provided for. So that's one of the reasons that they reached out to Ms. Deal, and effectively, yeah, they're asking that we somehow include airports in our zoning ordinance. So it would be my recommendation that you send it to the Planning Commission for review and consideration.
I make that motion that we do that. We send it, and with, hopefully the big end of us is pat on the back to hoping it goes. There's nothing wrong with our airports, private airports.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise?
So you'll take care of that?
I'll put that on their agenda, and then to address your comment, any change to the zoning ordinance, ultimately there'll be a public hearing, and you all will vote on it.
Yeah, I get all that.
Yeah.
We just need to get moving. Bill back there, he's as gray-headed as I am. I don't need to beat around the bush. So, other than that, I appreciate everybody.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Roscoe.
I just echo what Phil and Lori said, welcome to the community. Seems like everybody up here is involved. My brother owns a plane. He's got it down pilots. He'd be very interested in this. He'll love it. He's been looking for something like this for years to come in. So you can talk to him if you get a chance. And God bless everybody and stay safe. Be careful.
Mr. Sturgeon.
First of all, I'm excited about that over there also, because we talked about the possible LZ for the med flight. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you noticed or not, the helicopters are flying a lot with emergency services to try to help save lives. So, I think that's exciting. I'd like to thank Clegg for your work on this, because I know that's not an easy task, but I do like the direction that we're taking to try to clean up as much as we possibly can. And I think our citizens, landowners will appreciate that. Also, Dennis, I'd like to thank you for your hard work here in the building and getting us fixed on the 3rd floor there, and fixing the dinosaur of a situation up there. So, made a lot of people happy. Also, Sean and Lisa, I'd like to thank you all for y'all's work and y'all's staff. Also, we've got the chili cook-off, I think, coming here in the town of Marion real soon. And the Chihuahua, we've got the Apple Festival here in a week and a half. So, there'll be a lot of people coming in for that, I'm sure. As Roscoe says, I'll borrow your line, stay safe. And as people come out, let's pray for good weather at these events. And hopefully the virus will take a downturn so we can turn back to some normalcy.
Okay, thank you. Pray for some rain between events, though. We need rain.
We need rain bad.
I know how it's gonna rain. As soon as I mow a big hayfield, it'll rain.
Hurry up and mow
Everybody, everybody be safe. We thank you. We thank you for the discussion we've had here tonight. Having said that, I'm
sorry, one thing I did not put on the agenda was we do need to formally cancel the September 24th meeting, since it was adopted at your January meeting, so that would be one last action item that I'd recommend.
Motion to cancel the September
24th
meeting.
motion motion, we have a motion to second. Anybody, all those in favor of canceling that meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed likewise?
Can we get October and December while we're here?
I believe we'll meet again back here in October then, so.